Hi guys, Stephen and Gavin here again from the Life Skills Academy. We discussed social comparison anxiety on our um, previous video, and it's also been mentioned in our free school community. The description's below, actually, if you're interested. So make sure you join that. We go through topics like this all the time. And Gavin, we're just going to jump straight into it. Again, we have been setting 10-minute timers. It's been just stretching over. So we're going to set a realistic goal now today, 15 minutes, giving ourselves the buffer and just make sure that we have time and to make sure that we're not liars. So,
Yeah, I feel a little bit more space already, Steve.
so I'm going to start the 15-minute timer now. So, yeah. So again, the social comparison anxiety is something that we kind of happen all the time. Parents they might have heard it before, like the kid comes home from school a little bit sad. I'm not as good as this person, or why can X do this and I can't?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So what's really going on underneath that?
I think just even to frame that at the beginning, I think this whole there's so when we talk about anxiety, there's going to be a couple of different types of anxiety, a couple of different causes for different types of anxiety. We're going to deal with a very specific type of anxiety today, which is the 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 social comparison anxiety. And I think a lot of people kind of have concerns over this because they're worried about, like, do I have a window in which to intervene in this? And I think they can kind of sometimes see their child, they're so capable, their teen is so capable, but yet this is kind of eating away at them and they don't necessarily know what to do. So I suppose the purpose of what we're trying to do here is show them absolutely there's something that we can do, we should be doing, and there is a very step-by-step process that's completely aligned with our biology or neurology. To It's like, as I said, Steve, it's like the healthy eating. If we do this particular thing, you'll get certain results. So will
Not
you just ask me that?
instantaneous.
Will you just ask me that question again?
It's not instantaneous though. That's another point just on that. It's not something that you can say, I'll do this now and then everything's going to be fine. This is a
No.
process.
Yeah, it's not like, if you want it, this is basically a protective a protective system that, again, like the healthy eating, you don't want your body to suddenly break down. Okay, cool. So we'll have a program of, we make sure that we're kind of like 70-80% of the time, eating healthy. So it's the same type of system which we're talking about here. It can be used in crisis management, but it's more for, ensuring that your child moves into that kind of thrival
Yeah.
space, when you see the little warning signs starting to take place.
Yeah. So I suppose I was on the question where kids come home and they're saying X is better than me at this and that kind of stuff, and they're experiencing that social comparison anxiety. But what's really going on underneath all that?
Okay. I'm going to try and be succinct here. So the the judgment is the be all and end all. And the judgment is as follows. I perceive something that this person has, which I admire, and I don't have it. And the other side of that is, not only do I not have it, I resent the opposite, which I have. So, for example, I perceive high degrees of intelligence in this person or in this side of the group, and I see, let's call it, the lack of intelligence or the inability to do what they're doing. So I have an infatuation with the thing I see and a resentment for the thing I see in myself. And what that judgment does, it creates it activates our seek and avoid mechanism, which is our amygdala. So that means we want to impulsively seek the thing that they have that we think is all good, and run away from the thing that we have. So run away from ourselves. I have this, I want to get rid of it. And that creates the fear and the anxiety that I'm trying to get rid of something that I don't like about myself, and I'm trying to chase after something that I see in them that I want to import into myself.
Just on the amygdala, just go into that. I know you're a bit of a brain surgeon sometimes. Just explain what that is as well, just so everyone understands.
So it's really important. And I think why this is important is again framing it. So, like, if you're lost, if we give you a map, you go, okay, I'm here. So I understand where I'm lost and here's the pathway. So I suppose this what we're trying to do here is to give that that kind of frame as to what's going on. So the amygdala is effectively it's one of our most primitive brain regions, and it is designed to seek prey and avoid predator. And the amygdala, what it does is it likes to exaggerate perceptions. So, which means that prey is all good, it's life, it's survival. So, it's all good, no bad. And the consequence, the opposite, is the predator, which is all bad and it's death. So, the amygdala is responsible for all good, all bads. Now, here's the key. When our brain has a perception of an all good, all bad, doesn't have to be prey or predator, but within they have this and it's all good, I have
Yes,
this and it's all bad.
take intelligence. Take intelligence, I suppose.
Yeah. So they have this intelligence, and we'll break down what that means in a minute, but that's all good. And I have the other. And so that literally, that all good, all bad flicks us into our amygdala. We're trying to seek the thing that we're trying to consume and seek the thing that that we admire, and we're trying to run away from the thing that we resent. That's all pain. So that's a very, very brief explanation of it, but it is the trigger of why we feel the anxiety. It's the source of our anxiety, of our fear, and that those feelings of anxiety, those fear, and the impulse to I really need this, and I want to. That's where it comes from.
But underneath all that, like the intelligence piece there, like is that if they're doing that, is their intelligence low, even though they're feeling it is?
So the core. So to answer this question, right? Let's even maybe take it into what's the protocol in which to deal with that. Is that fair, Steve? To kind of
Okay.
move straight into that
Yeah.
protocol, that process. So this early protective mechanism that we're talking about is, and we've spoken about this in our previous videos. So not to go too far into highest values, but there's plenty of information in our previous videos about highest values. The very first thing to understand about comparison is that it is a judgment based on trying to live according to someone else's hierarchy of values. Now remember, like, this is not the corporate values. This is a very specific operating system, which we go into detail in other videos on. But the core metric, the core piece here is that number one, the first piece of the process is understand they're looking at someone else and saying that's what should be important to me, but and then comparing themselves according to that. So it's like as we said in our previous, it's like the tractor comparing themselves to the Ferrari and going, oh, that's where I should be able to operate, but that's not it. So the very first thing we need to understand is we need to root the child, the individual, the person in their highest value. And what does that mean? That means that a little process that we can help the child in. We do this the whole time. We do it in class with the children. I do it with athletes. We do it with anyone. That's the very first thing we always do is we bring them through a set of questions, or even by observation, we observe what their life is demonstrating is most important to them. Not what they say is, what their life demonstrates. And we then show them where they're most disciplined, reliable, and focused, where they're spontaneously inspired to act, where their leadership. So the first thing is they need to understand where they are, what their highest value is. And that's the first thing of rooting them in their highest value. And then they can see, oh, hold on a second. This is what's most inspiring to me. That's what's most inspiring to that person. But then the next, and stop me, Stephen, if I'm
Yeah,
if I'm
let's
going
hear.
too fast here, or if you need clarification, stop me on this. But the next really, really important part of this is that once we've isolated their highest value, the place that they're most inspired, dancing, specific type of dance, whatever that highest value is, then we go to them. It's very important. We go, what would be the disadvantages to your highest value if you were to be excelling on the area that you judged? So, for example, we pick, let's just say, the intelligence piece in school, in primary school or secondary school. And if we said, in order for you, what would be the disadvantage to you of excelling in that area, or displaying your intelligence in that area? What would be the disadvantage to your highest value? Well, do you want to sacrifice and spend discipline? Do you want to be disciplined, reliable, and focused in studying? Let's just say what it is in certain subjects. That is, do you want that? What would that how would that make you feel? And when the individual sees that the sacrifice to do what that other person did
Mm.
is a disadvantage to the area that they must love, it breaks the fantasy of the comparison.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. And that in turn would alleviate the anxiety then that they're
It's
feeling
the
in the
it's
comparison.
not a it's the first point of softening it, because now
Mm.
what you're doing is you're breaking the fantasy. Oh, it would be all good if I had this intelligence in this area. So what you're showing them first of all is you're kind of going, okay, here's what's most inspiring to you. Here's where you're most disciplined, reliable, and focused. But what would be the sacrifice to the highest value if you were to be displaying it over there? Well, geez, I don't really want to be spending like hours
Mm.
studying this, and I would prefer to be like,
Playing football
spending
or
time
pretend
dancing
or
or doing like what I'm doing here. And then suddenly that takes that off the pedestal. So that's the very first part of it. And that is, as we've talked about before, the know thyself, be thyself, love thyself. That is the first part of the know thyself, is rooting them in the highest value. Does that make sense, Steve?
yeah. So essentially, you're saying that if the child's highest value, say, or the teen's highest value would be, just say it's sport, they're socially comparing themselves to somebody who's academically smart, and they're saying how good that would be. But it would, if they realize the sacrifice it would take away from their sport and the area that they actually care about and
Absolutely.
they're most resilient in,
Yeah.
when they can make that comparison or that link and understand that a lot more would have to come from what they're actually interested in, to what actually if they're displaying that they're not interested in, then that will soften the anxiety.
It softens the fantasy they've placed on it's like, let me give you a perfect example of that. Sometimes when I'm working with athletes or with teams, I give the example. We kind of go, okay, if I said to you, right, would you like a Ferrari, Steve? If I was to kind of go, Stephen, would you
Mm.
like a Ferrari? And
Yeah.
like everyone goes, absolutely. Let's just say that Ferrari costs £250,000. Yeah, no, I'd love a Ferrari. I'd love a Ferrari. Okay, it's the fantasy of the Ferrari. Like, right, cool. So in reality, you're going to have to do a lot of work and have a lot of sacrifice in order to earn this 250,000 to buy your Ferrari. Now, would you still like the Ferrari knowing what you're going to have to sacrifice to get the Ferrari? And they're like, oh, gee, I don't know if I would actually.
Mm.
I kind of like what I'm doing right now. I don't know if I. So once you break the fantasy of what's required to get the thing you thought you wanted,
Mm.
the fantasy calms down. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
If that fantasy isn't broken, even though the person is rooted in their highest value, they may still have an all good thought. Oh, well, I really want it in this way. But when you break the fantasy, when they see all of the challenges, all of the obstacles, all of the disservice to their highest value, if they were to be, then that starts to reduce, that starts to calm down that piece. Let's call it step one and step two. Number one is isolate that highest value, and number two is break the fantasy as to where. And there's a process to this. We're going through it very, very quickly. We're trying to give them people a frame to understand that there is a pathway for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
The, there is a third step. I don't know if you want me to go jump in, or do you want to? And do you want to? Is there any kind of clarifying questions there you want to ask on that?
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. But I suppose, does when people are making these and they have these fantasies, does that imbalance cause fear and cause these kind of triggers, I
Absolutely,
suppose?
it's really good. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely, a fantasy. Let's understand what that is. A fantasy is when we perceive something has all good, all support, all advantages. So winning the lotto, people have suddenly they have all good. I could do this. In our, let's call it a ratio of perception. We have all good, and suddenly we get excited. But every fantasy is the source of a fear. So all fears and fantasies are linked in the mind. You cannot have a fear without having a corresponding fantasy. So take to your example. Let me finish the lotto example. Would be that if you actually believed that 200 million euros was you won it, but I said to you, there's just a slight thing we got to check here with that nine. It could be an eight, but it's yours if you didn't. Can you imagine the fear in your body you would feel to balance the fantasy of which you have, oh, my life is about to get, oh, if this doesn't happen, oh my God, I'm not going to have all this, and this. So it's the same process. If you look in a social comparison, if you look, isolate in someone a particular trait, action, or inaction, and have a fantasy about how good it would be if you had that, that creates the fear in you of not having it. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
every fear is balanced by a fantasy, and every fantasy has a fear. But does that make sense,
Yeah.
Steve? Have I answered your question on that?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, absolutely.
And
100%.
that fear fantasy drops you into the amygdala because again, it's the seeking of the fear and avoid seeking of the fantasy corresponding with the avoidance of
Yeah, the fear.
the fear of not getting. Does that make sense? So they're
Yeah.
totally linked. The is yep. Will I go on or
Yeah, no, no, go on. Yeah, that's good. Well, how much? Yeah, looking at.
okay?
Oh,
Again, stop me because I'm just stop me in any moment here. The final piece the final piece here to because as we said, remember that it's the perception that's the issue. So the final piece of cracking the perception and bringing the perception back into balance. Because remember we said we started off by saying they have that, that's all good. I don't have that, that's all bad.
yeah,
We so the third step is owning the thing that we see in others. 100% to the same degree, not a little bit, not a tiny bit, till we go and say 100% I have that to the same degree as that person is. And people might say, oh, that's not possible. 100% guaranteed you can do that 100% of the time, anytime. There's not one trait that you can't own to the degree that you see it in someone else. There's an old saying that the world is a mirror. Whatever you see in anybody else, you have it in yourself. It's hard for people to grasp that until they go through the process. But the example here would be that take intelligence. We break intelligence down into its corresponding piece because intelligence is just a label. So it could be intelligence could be defined as when the teenager is looking at it or the child is looking at it, it could be okay, they are able to spend a lot of time, so focus on the problem and come up with a solution. So intelligence could be broken down into 3 or 4 actions
yeah,
or inactions. The inaction would be they don't quit. Do you get what I'm saying? But
yeah,
when we bundle all that together, the perception is intelligence.
yeah,
So what we do is we break that down and then we go and we own it. And how do we own it? We go to our highest value, the area that we're most disciplined, reliable, and focused, the area we're spontaneously inspired to act, that sliver. And then we go and we ask the questions where and when have you done that specific trait, action, or inaction? And you answer that question 20 to 30 times. This is not, oh, once off or do once, or this is a process. You hold them accountable. I've done this. We've done this. We spoke about in our last video. Let's just take. I had a girl. We did this in sixth class who was. This is exact same problem. And what we did was we isolated our highest value was camogie and baking. Now I'm being very general. They were a little bit more concentrated than that, but baking and camogie. And she was judging herself about she was judging herself on the intelligence of I think actually was maybe confidence or of another boy in her class. What we did is we found her highest value. We broke down what that confidence was. What was she actually perceiving? And it was basically she was perceiving as a sense of self certainty. So she perceived that he had a sense of self certainty in the group. So then we went, okay, where do you display that the same degree of self certainty in your highest value? And we found 30 examples. It was in baking when she was doing it in front of her mom, when she was reading, when she was looking at the recipes, she knew she was going to be able to follow the next step. When she was presenting the things she cooked to people, we found we crystallized the reason why you have to find 30 to 40 examples is that when your brain crystallizes a when and a where, when it goes to what we call an episodic memory, the brain sees it and it owns and it goes, oh, you're bringing the unconscious conscious is what's
yeah,
happening. Now, I hope
yeah.
this isn't too technical, is it?
No, no, it's good. I can see where you're coming from, but it's real examples that's happened before with parents. I'm sure that was a big
That
impact.
they, and all that's happened is that they've previously been unconscious aware of these and you're just bringing it to light.
Because parents now, for you mentioned the window at the start about is there the window and the timing and that kind of stuff. So like there is that window to make the changes.
This I want to compare this type in 30 to 40 years time. This will be how things are done the same way as 30 to 40 years ago healthy eating maybe wasn't the same as and smoking the same thing. This will be how things are done from now on. So 100% this is a system that you can be put in, that you can utilize now. You can use it every single day, kind of micro steps. As long as you can see it and you understand it, it just comes through conversation, it pointed out, and it stops the other side of stuff. So, for example, a lot of people, when they see these kind of this social comparison, they try just encouragement. Oh no, like, but
Yeah,
encouragement alone only compounds it. It doesn't work.
yeah,
It doesn't work.
yeah.
Encouragement,
We
that
can
type
go
of
into
stuff.
this, I'm sure. We have kind of run over time a bit.
Okay.
I'm happy to wrap it up because I think we've hit a good kind of three-step process. But again, as we said before, it's not a quick fix. It's not anything that's going to solve by just doing it once.
Sorry,
It's
just sorry, just it can be a quick fix. 100%. This can be used as, like, this will have an immediate effect. But the point of it is like 100% it can have a quick fix, but its use is building over time. The same way as that, again, healthy eating. If this is the process you implement because you understand it, you know it, this is a protective mechanism and roots your child in themselves and helps them to build their identity internally. And as opposed to needing to go to a quick fix. But absolutely, this would be, if it is that kind of crisis situation, 100%, this is to be massively applicable.
Thanks a million, everyone, for listening. And again, we do these videos on a weekly basis, and we pop them on YouTube, and they're in that free community again, school. There's links to it down below in the description. Thanks a million, guys. Thanks, Gav.
All right, thanks, Steve.